Good morning and welcome to Remote Bible Class. I know it is unusual for you to find yourself watching Bible class and church service on various forms of technology. It's equally unusual for me to find myself teaching Bible class to the lens of my cell phone just a few feet away. I have made an effort, I think this is take 49, to teach this class several times this morning. I've started out in the backyard, then I was in the front yard, now I'm in my office. You're looking at the cleanest 16 square feet of office space in my office, so I straightened that up for your viewing pleasure. This morning's Bible class will be in 1 Peter chapter 1, so join me there if you would. Starting in verse 1, Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ, to God's elect, strangers in the world, scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia, who have been chosen according to the foreknowledge of God, the Father, and through the sanctifying work of the Spirit for obedience to Jesus Christ and the sprinkling by his blood. Grace and peace be yours in abundance. This morning, as we go over Bible class material, I'm hoping that God's grace and peace finds you as well in your homes in abundance. So there's a few things I want to bring out of this first scripture that we read here, these first 2 or 3 verses that we read. First of all, his description of God's people, us. He describes us in these first century churches as God's elect. God's chosen, and that's what we are. We, dealing with COVID-19 at home and all the different ways that we're dealing with it, are still God's chosen people. He describes them as strangers in the world. And I don't know what you feel about the world that we're in today, but I do feel like a stranger in the world that we're in today. Through this crisis, it is incredibly strange. And I find myself missing things that I had taken for granted. For instance, I miss being at church with my brothers and sisters. I miss being at my office. I never thought I would think that, but I do. I miss being with my coworkers and the routine of the day at my office. I miss taking Max to school. I miss being in the same proximity with my mother and visiting with her on a regular basis. I miss those things, and the absence of those leaves me feeling strange, as if the world we're in today is strange. These elect, these chosen of God, these first century Christians, they were strangers in their world too, but not for those reasons. And really, we're not strangers in our world for those reasons. We're strangers because we don't belong here. We have a residence assured in heaven with God. And so really here in this world, whether it's normal or strange, this is not our residence. This is not where we will ultimately be. He goes on to say that they're scattered throughout all of these different kingdoms. And he says that they have been chosen by God for the sanctifying work of the Spirit, for the obedience to Jesus Christ, as we all have. And he goes on in verse 3, and follow along with me there, to say, praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. We have been given new life into a living hope. Today, the thing that is on the news that is the most prevalent is the idea of death projections as a result of the virus that our country is in the midst of right now. And there are those that are trying to speak a more hopeful message because hope is such an intoxicating, magnetizing force. And here it's described as a living hope for us. We have the opposite of death. We have a living hope through Jesus Christ. And it goes on to say that we have an inheritance that can never perish, spoil, or fade, kept in heaven. An inheritance that will never perish, spoil, or fade. You know, I was at Pleasant Grove Walmart the other day, and there was a gentleman who had two carts that he was pushing one and pulling the other. The one he was pushing had lots of things heaped up in it, but I noticed there were two packages of toilet paper on the top of that cart. And the second cart that he was towing behind him with some difficulty was entirely full of dry beans. So if you're looking for dry beans, this guy cornered the market on them. And I was actually looking for dry beans and couldn't find any. But you know, as I was thinking about that gentleman walking around in his fear-prompted shopping, purchasing an enormous amount of beans that really is a lifetime supply of beans. No one needs to eat a shopping cart of beans in their life. Certainly Mitch can relate to that idea because my buddy Mitch doesn't like beans. But a shopping cart full of dry beans is a lifetime supply. He had the ratio wrong anyway. The toilet paper to bean ratio was completely wrong. I won't get into that math with you, but it was completely wrong. But the truth is, those supplies, as comforting as they may have been to him, are going to perish. They're going to spoil. Even dry beans have an expiration date. They're not permanent. They're not going to last. But you and I, as God's chosen, as God's elect, as strangers in this world, we have an inheritance that will never perish, never fade, and never spoil. And so as you're thinking on these things this week, and as you're reading 1 Peter chapter 1, which I hope you will do, I hope it fills you with this living hope, this idea that provisions have already been laid by in store for us, and they're in store in heaven, a place where no one can reach, a place where no one can buy them out. I was in Allen's yesterday, and they were selling toilet paper one roll at a time. Have we really come to this in our world? I don't want to live in a world that sells toilet paper one roll at a time. We have an inheritance through God that will never perish, spoil, or fade, and is always going to be abundant. It goes on to say, who through faith are shielded by God's power until the coming of the salvation that is ready to be revealed in the last time. I don't know what you're doing to follow this Centers for Disease Control regulation. You're washing your hands regularly. You're using antibacterial soap. Maybe you're walking around in a mask and rubber gloves. I don't know. But we have a faith that shields us by God's power until the coming of the salvation. We have a layer, a force field between us and the whims of this world that is more powerful than antibacterial soap. That is stronger than latex gloves. That is stronger than these masks that we can't seem to make enough of these days. Take comfort in that truth. And then on verse 6 it says, in this you greatly rejoice, though now, for a little while, you may have had to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. I don't know what life is like for you at your home. It's different for me at home here. It's a lot more time at home. I had been traveling for weeks leading up to this event, and it's unusual to be home so much. It's a blessing, though, to be home so much. I'm getting to be with my family, and being with them, we're getting to laugh together. We're getting to play games together. We're getting to assemble puzzles together. None of them like the puzzles as much as I do, but they still come and help me do it from time to time. We are given this blessing of time with one another, and even in this great trial, we need to find the blessing in it. He goes on to say, these have come so that your faith of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may be proved genuine and may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed. Though you have not seen him, you love him. And even though you do not see him now, you believe in him and are filled with an inexpressible and glorious joy, for you are receiving the goal of your faith, the salvation of your souls. We are in an unprecedented time, and it is very fluid. It seems to change almost every day if you watch enough news, and there's certainly plenty of news on. There's no baseball on right now, though Major League Baseball was supposed to start today. There's none of these things that we're accustomed to, but there's no shortage of news. And unfortunately, a lot of the news that we're hearing is bad news. I'm here to switch that paradigm. I'm here in this class to tell you about good news. I'm going to reread verse 8 again for you. Though you have not seen him, you love him. And even though you do not see him now, you believe in him and are filled with an inexpressible and glorious joy, for you are receiving the goal of your faith, the salvation of your souls. Salvation. You know, in the earlier part of our reading, it talked about grace and peace. The truth of our salvation should give us grace and peace, even in the midst of the difficulties that we're in. Last night I went outside and it was a little cloudy, and I was out there looking for clouds. And a song came to my mind last night, and I went and looked for our old songbook that we used to all sing from. Song 345 in the Songs of Faith and Praise songbook. It is well with my soul. And I'm going to read the first verse of this song because I think that's germane to what we're feeling today and at this time. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. This morning, as I was thinking about this song and I was looking at it again, thinking about being at peace and letting it be well with our soul that has received the goal of our faith, salvation. When I was thinking about this song, I got onto Facebook and I was looking at a post that a sweet sister, Carolyn Hook, put on Facebook. She shared the singing of this very song by dozens of people singing remotely into their phones like I'm teaching this Bible class. And I encourage you, after we get done talking this morning, that you'll go onto Facebook and look Miss Carolyn Hook's page up and see this beautiful song that was sung that by so many people that are remotely having to sing together. But the unity of their voices was so beautifully blended in this very positive message about things being well with our soul. Right now, in the uncertain times that we're in, we have surety that things are going to be okay. We know the victory is already ours. So I encourage you to read further into 1 Peter chapter 1. Next week we'll talk a little bit more about the coming verses, and maybe I'll get down and be able to do this better than I've done it in the past. I really wanted to achieve that, Cliff Harris outside vibe that he had going last week with his announcements and communion message, but I was just unable to pull it off. So maybe next week I'll be able to do outside better. But until then, I'm praying for you, and I'm thinking about each of you, and I'm longing for the time when we can be together again. It's something I took for granted before, but I really miss now. So I encourage you to study 1 Peter chapter 1, and I look forward to sharing more thoughts with you next week. Thank you, everybody.